This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
So, today we're looking at chapter 16. The title is The Wisdom, and our chapter heading is The Avendasaur Leaf. We saw at the end of our last chapter that Nynaeve had arrived.
Perrin said she had arrived, but we hadn't actually seen her yet.
Yeah. So they're all kind of marching to their doom, it looks like.
Yeah. Well, Perrin said it's cold enough to snow in there, right? I think is what he said. The end of the last chapter.
And just as the boys and Tom are entering the inn, Min grabs Rand's arm, and I just really like this little exchange. She grabs his arm and pulls him to the side, and this isn't the first time this happens, but Tom says, "We don't have time for that, boy."
I definitely put that down too. Yeah. He's like, "Stop flirting." This is
yeah, foreshadowing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think it's very foreshadowing. I think when a pretty girl grabs your arm in a hallway and pulls you into a corner, that's pretty flirty.
Yeah, more or less. She's trying to tell Rand that Nynaeve is there. She doesn't know who Nynaeve is, but she says a woman arrived at the inn today, and she's a part of it.
Right, because she's got the sparks.
Yeah.
So she's part of what makes Rand glow, or makes him... Yeah, well, remember my theory from last time, where the darkness was sort of the darkness growing in Rand.
Yeah, I like that theory. It makes sense.
And I think Nynaeve is a huge, huge part of what keeps Rand sane. He's able to trust her long after he loses trust for pretty much everybody else around him. I mean, Moiraine's gone at one point. He doesn't really trust Perrin. He doesn't really spend time with Perrin or Matt. He certainly doesn't trust Egwene. When she becomes the Armerlin, but he depends on Nynaeve.
Yeah,
she's very much a cornerstone of his life for the entire series.
Totally.
She may be one of my favorite characters.
Nynaeve?
I'll put that out there. I think Nynaeve might be my favorite character in this series.
I definitely like her.
Because she is so badly flawed and yet still so very badass, and she goes through such a journey from wisdom and hating Moiraine, and she just changes so much and does so much that I have a hard time not being really admiring her writing and her character.
I feel that. Yeah. She's kind of a believable character.
Right.
Right. Because she is so heavily flawed.
and in some ways, I think that's why everyone hates her. Well, not everyone, but I think there's certainly a group of people out there who don't like Nynaeve.
I mean, she's kind of a jerk.
Yeah, well, sure. She doesn't tip. But she does save the world a few times, so you got to give her that.
Yeah. In multiple ways.
Mm-hmm. And I was sort of thinking about, how she must have just traveled for a week on her own. She was tracking Lan, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering,
up in a second.
Why doesn't she run into more shadow spawn? She must be further behind.
I don't know. I mean, I guess the shadow spawn aren't looking for her. How long have they been? They just arrived the night before, right? So she's actually moving faster than they were. She would have to be. If she waited a day or two or whatever it was before she lost hope in the town meeting, before she left, then she would have had to, I guess, just not stop the entire time.
I think it's pretty incredible that she's that close, wall tracking, not having the ability to wipe away fatigue.
Mm-hmm. It is pretty incredible now that you say that.
I have to wonder if maybe she did some channeling to catch up with them.
It's totally possible. So we know that She's past the sickness phase at this point.
Yeah. She's an incredible channeler. She does it completely unconsciously.
Maybe she was channeling the whole time. She was angry enough, probably.
Right. I mean, certainly she does it when she heals, but we don't really see her channeling any other time other than healing. So, I don't know.
That's true.
I just was wondering, like, she avoided all the trollocs, she avoided all the myrddraal, she avoided the Drakkar, even though she was right behind them.
I wanted to read this line. Moiraine and Nynaeve sat at opposite ends of the table, neither taking their eyes from the other. They're just staring at each other.
Oh, yeah.
The most awkward possible way.
Didn't he say something about even though the fire is hot, it still felt really cold in there? And Lan's like standing near the fire trying to get warm.
Despite the fire, it seemed freezing cold, and all coming from the two women at the table. So now that the boys are there, Nynaeve agrees to actually talk to them, and she presumably wouldn't discuss anything until they produced the kids.
Oh yeah, she was sitting there in total silence, just staring at her, tugging her braid. Little quote there. She kept giving it little tugs, the way she did when she was being even more stubborn than usual with the village council.
Yeah. And then, since everyone is here, Lan said, leaving the fireplace, filling one of the silver cups with wine, perhaps we will finally take this. He proffered the cup to Nynaeve, that she's suspicious about. She doesn't seem to even want to accept anything to drink or eat from them. And then he says, I am interested, he said, in how you found us. So am I. Moiraine leaned forward intently. Nynaeve replies, there's nowhere for you to go except Baerlon. To be safe, though, I followed your trail. You certainly cut back and forth enough, but then I suppose you would not care to risk meeting decent people. You followed our trail? Lan said, truly surprised for the first time that Rand could remember. I must be getting careless. She says, you left very little trace, but I can track as well as any man in the two rivers, except perhaps Tam Althor. She looked at Lan challengingly, but he only nodded with approval. If you can follow a trail I have tried to hide, he taught you well. Few can do that, even in the borderlands. Abruptly, Nynaeve buried her face in her cup. Rand's eyes widened. She was blushing.
Oh, yeah.
That's a cute little moment. That's also I guess not a true foreshadowing, but there's Nynaeve is very more flattered than she should be, or I would expect her to be.
I mean, this is the foundation of her relationship with Lan. He is surprised and impressed for really the first time, right? Up to this point, we've had things like Lan scoffed, Lan scowled, Lan,
Yeah.
Here he's surprised and impressed. And how often is Lan around channelers all the time? He's not impressed with much.
True.
This is sort of the beginning of that tracking ability, but then he also finds out she's one of the most powerful channelers of all time. And I mean, she's female channelers. She's pretty incredible. And so he just, and he's, tall, dark, and handsome. So when he's complimenting her, she's a little flattered. She's a little, that's that blushing, right?
Yeah.
You don't see Nynaeve blush very often.
That makes me wonder if she's crushing already.
Oh, yeah.
That's really soon. I mean, they just met.
They've been together in the town, and they fought together. And
True.
Lan is described as handsome, if very scowly and angry. But I don't think that scowly and angry ever turned Nynaeve off.
Nah.
No.
She probably looks at it as a challenge.
Then we get a little bit, I think Tom gets in Nynaeve's face. Kind of.
Oh, yeah, there's that moment.
Because he basically is telling her all about the White Cloaks.
She mentions that Moiraine is an Aes Sedai out loud. You have been told that isn't known here, Lan said sharply. You must learn to guard your tongue. Why should I? Nynaeve demanded. Why should I help hide you or what you are? I've come to take Egwene and the boys back to Emond's Field, not to help you spirit them away. I guess I'll just read this whole thing. It's pretty threatening. Tom broke in a scornful voice. If you want them to see their village again, or you either, you had better be more careful. There are those in Baerlon that would kill her. He jerked his head toward Moiraine for what she is. Him too, he indicated Lan. then abruptly moved forward to put his fists on the table. He loomed over Nynaeve. His long mustaches and thick eyebrows suddenly seemed threatening. Her eyes widened, and she started to lean back, away from him. Then her back stiffened defiantly. Tom did not appear to notice. He went right on in an ominously soft voice. They'd swarm over this inn like murderous ants on a rumor, a whisper. Their hate is that strong. Their desire to kill or take any like these two. And the girl, the boys, you are all associated with them. Enough for the White Cloaks, anyway. You wouldn't like the way they ask questions, especially when the White Tower is involved. White Cloak questioners assume you're guilty before they start, and they have only one sentence for that kind of guilt. They don't care about finding the truth. They think they know that already. All they go after with their hot irons and pincers is a confession. Best you remember, some secrets are too dangerous for saying aloud, even when you think you know who hears. He straightened with a muttered, I seem to tell that to people often of late.
I don't have anything to say about that.
It's great delivery.
Yeah. That's Tom telling it like it is.
Yeah.
One line I liked here is when Nynaeve is talking to Matt, and he's like, well, what does my dad think? And she's like, he's afraid you'll try your tricks with Outlanders and get your head thumped.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what I'd be worried about too. And honestly, if Matt wasn't so damn lucky, he would get his head thumped a lot.
Rand almost got his ass kicked because of one of Matt's pranks.
Already.
Yeah.
Well, and the channeling sickness.
Last chapter, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was when they were taunting the White Cloaks.
Yeah.
Which is why they need to get out of town now, actually. I think they're, in the next chapter, we'll see them flee. And then sort of Moiraine turns to Nynaeve and says, you and I must talk, Wisdom. And that was my sort of second, you're a wizard, Harry. It's that, I don't know why I can't get that out of my head, but just... she keeps telling these girls that, guess what? You can channel. And then I think there's a great paragraph here, which I hope you underlined, that Moiraine says about touching the true source.
Yeah. I only highlighted the bottom of it, but there's this whole paragraph that starts with, there are many dangers from which I cannot protect them, Moiraine agreed, any more than you can protect them from being struck by lightning if they go home. But it is not lightning of which they must be afraid, nor even White Cloaks. It's the Dark One, and minions of the Dark One. From those things I can protect. Touching the true source, touching Saidar, gives me that protection, as it does every Aes Sedai. Nynaeve's mouth tightened skeptically. Moraine's grew tighter, too, with anger, but she went on, her voice hard on the edge of patience. Even those poor men who find themselves wielding the power for a short time gain that much, though sometimes touching Saidin protects, and sometimes the taint makes them more vulnerable. But I, or any Aes Sedai, can extend my protection to those close to me. I want to talk about that in a second.
I do too.
And then she says, no fade can harm them as long as they are as close to me as they are right now. No trolloc can come within a quarter mile without Land knowing it, feeling the evil of it. Can you offer them half as much if they return to Emond's Field with you? I underlined those last couple of sentences because we talked about this in a previous episode.
Yeah.
Where we were debating, or neither of us could really come up with anything for like how far of a radius that works for. She says a quarter of a mile right here. So maybe a little further than that.
I actually bolded that little quarter of a mile. I was like, I can't believe we didn't know that, because she says it right here. And it was nowhere on the internet that I could find either. Like, we looked. Yeah,
I don't think it's really referenced a lot. I think this may be the only time someone actually says within this radius.
And I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I've read a few things online, and I'm not sure this is true, that the weeks in some cases are 10 days versus 7 days. And like, he changed the length of the week a couple of times in the story. And possibly...
I can't say I
a
ever
mile is longer. It's just, again, nothing I've noticed in the series, just things I've read online, but I haven't really found maybe comments on forum posts. So nothing in detail. I was just curious if you knew anything about that, about his measurements for a mile and hour and week may not necessarily be the same that we're familiar with, because that's pretty constant in some fantasy. A lot of fantasy has different measurements, or if you're on another planet, obviously a day means something different.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if you had any idea.
No,
that.
I don't know. I do remember when I was reading this over, I was surprised to see the term mile.
Yeah.
Do we see that later?
Not very often. I feel like
think
it's
they
like
usually use
leagues.
leagues.
Yeah.
Which I think is 3 miles. Or roughly equivalent.
Sure.
That's how I imagined it anyway. I mean, I guess in our universe, a league is 3 miles. Or something.
Yeah, that may be an anachronism. It might just be something that ended up in the story and didn't get caught in
That's kind of what I
editing.
was suspected.
Because I don't remember a lot of other uses of miles in the story.
No, me neither. And I just looked in the glossary of Eye of the World, and under league, it has a measure of distance equal to 4 miles.
Interesting. Does it have a week in there?
No, I don't see it.
Did you know the Grateful Dead had a song called "The Eye of the World"?
I didn't.
I just found it on Google. On the Google.
Nynaeve responds to Tom here, and I just liked what she said, whether or not she's correct. She says, "You stand up, straw men," Nynaeve said. We have a saying in the Two Rivers. Whether the bear beats the wolf or the wolf beats the bear, the rabbit always loses.
That's a great quote.
Yeah. Take your contest somewhere else and leave Emmenfield's folk out of it. And I just liked that there. It gives us a good insight into what Nynaeve is feeling in this situation.
Also reminds me a lot of current day politics.
Yeah, it applies.
Yeah, I actually kind of got depressed when I read that sentence.
Democrat, Republican, we're all screwed.
When the politicians fight, the people get screwed. That's basically... And then shortly after that, I think she's talking to Rand, and she says, "Coming with you? Why would I do that?" You know you're coming.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like she knows she's coming already. She's in denial about it, but...
You think she knows?
I think it's one of those things that, she sort of senses. Sort of, because she can channel. And there's a lot of affinity going on. And I'm guessing there's something, the affinity with Egwene. That's why she knows she's going to be the next Wisdom. I assume she has some affinity with Moiraine.
Yeah.
She got the women circled together and told them that she was leaving. I have to wonder if... Remember we were talking about Moraine's conversation with Elsbeth Luhan?
Yeah.
And we wondered what the topic of their conversation was? I have to wonder if she wasn't telling them that their Wisdom was a channeler. And that one of the reasons they agreed to let her go is because she said, she may need to come with me for training. Or she may want to.
That's totally possible. Oh, wait. Was it with... She had a conversation with...
I'm sorry, not Elsbeth Luhan.
Yeah.
Alvier.
Why can't I think of her name? Egwene's mom. Bran and...
Moiraine.
Oh. I guess we always hear her referred to as Mistress.
Yeah, Mistress Alvier, yeah. But Moiraine, M-A-R-I-N. Moiraine is her name.
On what you said about the affinity between Nynaeve and Moiraine, made me think... I just flipped back a couple of pages to where Min is talking, and she says, "The sparks, Rand. She met Mistress Alice coming in, and there were sparks with just the two of them. Yesterday I couldn't see sparks without at least 3 or 4 of you together, but today it's all sharper and more furious. It's a wonder the inn doesn't catch fire. You're all in danger more today than yesterday, since she came."
Yeah, there's 2 things I wanted to ask about that quote. One, it looks like the whole party coming together seems to have made everything sharper, that they needed her to complete the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is, why are they in more danger? That's what I don't understand. I actually had a question. I do not understand why Nynaeve being there puts them in more danger.
I have a rough theory. I have an untested rough theory. I see all the different members of the party. Obviously, there are, I don't want to say more and less important people, but there are. I mean, like the three Taveran boys are, well, okay, this is how I see it. Rand is like the sun. He's the strongest Taveran. And the two boys are like big planets, and they get pulled into his orbit. Jupiter and Saturn. Right. And then you have all these smaller planets as well that are all get pulled into his orbit. And the more they're together, the more force we see, I guess. And
gravitational pull.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
So the more forces at work in the little network. Okay, this is the part that I'm not really sure about. So when they are together, there's an equal opposite effect. Kind of like how, as the Dark One gets more powerful, Rand gets more powerful.
Sure.
So maybe it could be the same with the party. Like, as they're...
Equal and opposite to what?
So, like, they're all getting together, and the pattern is putting... The forces of the dark are compelled by the pattern to, like, meet. These two forces meet.
So you're saying that the gravitational pull of having more of our main characters in one place is basically forcing the Dark One and basically pulling them into that place as well. Just the pattern is going to pull them
Pulling
together.
everything together.
Yeah.
Including the forces of the dark.
Right. Yeah, sure. That basically the Taveranness is tugging on the pattern, and that tugs not only on our good guys' ropes, but also on the bad guys and on the dark forces. Like, he is pulling them into the pattern. They're as much pattern as anyone else.
Yeah.
And so he's pulling all of those characters, all the Trollocs, all of the Fades. They're also being affected by the Taveranness.
That's my theory.
Yeah.
Kind of like... Or kind of along similar lines to what we see later with Rand's random chance. I don't want to call it an ability. It's more like the random chance mishaps that are happening.
His aura?
It's like sometimes, everybody in a village gets sick and dies, and other times an unusual amount of babies are born or something.
There's a lot of marriages.
No, yeah, there's the marriage.
There's the spears falling in a circle. There's a lot of like people falling down and not getting hurt, or like just tripping and falling and dying horribly, finding gold, losing gold.
Mm-hmm. But there's always like a balance. Like something awful will happen and then something great will happen.
Right. And I think as the Dark One causes more bad things to happen, his balance becomes almost all good things.
Right.
I think we diverged a little bit.
Yeah, rough theory.
And then I thought there was a sort of a good question here where is it Perrin asking, and why you at all? As soon as
they get dismissed from the room after the bear quote.
I think Rand's just asking why did you come? Why not like my father? Why not like Matt's father? Like, why not some hunters? Why did they send the wisdom? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. So Moiraine kind of kicks everybody out of the room except for Nynaeve and has some chat with her, and Nynaeve walks out. She turned toward Rand, and for the first time he realized the others had all quietly disappeared. He did not want to face the wisdom alone, but he could not get away now that he had met Nynaeve's eye, a particularly searching eye, he thought, puzzled. What did they say in there? He drew himself up as she came closer. She makes some comments about how he looks like the sword belongs on him now and how he seems like he's grown. And then he says, what happened at the village meeting? And Nynaeve kind of dodges the question. She says, it was a shambles, but I didn't want to tell Moiraine that. And then Rand says, something happened, he insisted. Why do you want us to go back if you think there's even a chance we're right? And why you at all? As soon send the mayor himself as the wisdom. You have grown, she smiled, and for a moment her amusement had him shifting on his feet. I can think of a time when he would not have questioned where I chose to go or what I chose to do. Wherever or whatever it was. A time just a week ago. It doesn't make sense. Why are you really here? And then she basically explains to him that while she decided that everyone was taking too long to debate the issue. So she just leaves and tells the women's circle that she's going to handle it herself.
Kind of reminds me of Loyal.
Loyal?
Yeah, he just sort of leaves when they're taking too long to debate things. He just takes it upon himself to go.
That's right. He like asks permission and they take forever and he just leaves.
He just leaves. But yeah, I mean, she sort of gets the wisdom circle together and they debate it and she lets them know. She just doesn't let the men's council, the village council, know. They're just still arguing when she leaves.
She says, as I said, the meeting was a shambles. Everybody agreed someone had to be sent after you, but the village split into two groups. One wanted you rescued, though there was considerable argument over how that was to be done, considering that you were with the likes of her. He was glad she was remembering to watch what she said. The others believed Tam, he said. Not exactly, but they thought you shouldn't be among strangers either, especially not with someone like her. And then she just explains that, like, everybody wanted to be a part of this rescue party and this and that.
So basically what she's saying is she's either going to bring them back or she's going to go with them. Those are the two things, right? Because when she's saying you don't want to be here alone, she's saying that's because everyone wanted to go with you and be part of the party.
Yeah.
So she knows she's going. It's one of the two options.
Yeah, she doesn't actually say that they're definitely going back. I'm just kind of noticing that as you're pointing that out. The next thing she says is, so I called the women's circle together and told them what had to be done. I cannot say that they liked it, but they saw the right of it, and that's why I'm here. Because the men around Emmons Field are stubborn woolheads. They're probably still arguing about who to send, though I left word that I would take care of it. But she doesn't say what she's going to do.
They sent them to either A, bring them back, or B, go with them. Mm-hmm. And since they're not coming back,
she's there to
go with them.
Protect them.
Yeah.
I think as she sees it. Make sure
they're not by themselves.
Yeah. Although what exactly she's going to do, not sure.
I mean, ability has never stopped Nynaeve from just being stubborn and doing whatever she wants.
Yeah.
Whether that's healing somebody who shouldn't survive, she just bites down and fixes it.
Yeah. It's too bad she's so scared in the next chapter when the trollocs are chasing them. Otherwise, if she had been angry, she could have just handled them herself.
Well, again, I think at channeling at this point, she's just a healer.
Yeah, I don't know that she knows that she can channel. Does she?
No.
Yeah, I don't think she's aware of it.
Well, I mean, isn't that why she and Moiraine sat down and talked?
It's never said specifically what was said in the room. Like I underlined a particularly searching eye, he thought, puzzled, when Nynaeve walks out of the room and she's looking at Rand. What did they say? And he has that thought, but she never says exactly what Moiraine said.
Doesn't she ask if anyone of the three boys was born outside the Two Rivers, or is that something she talked about back in Emmons Field?
No, she mentions that. What did she say to you in there, he asked. More of the same, Nynaeve replied, and she wanted to know about you boys, to see if she could reason out why you have attracted this kind of attention that you have, she said. She tried to disguise it, but most of all she wanted to know if any of you were born outside of the Two Rivers. His face suddenly as taut as a drumhead. He managed a hoarse chuckle. She does think of some odd things. I hope you assured her that we're all Emmons Field born. Of course, she replied. There had only been a heartbeat's hesitation before she spoke. So brief he would have missed it if he had not been watching for it. And then that's when he knows. He's like, oh, I wasn't born in the Two Rivers.
I mean, he's known that since Tam let it slip. But now this is just verification.
He tells Nynaeve about what he heard Tam saying during the fever dream, and she tries to write it off and says, like, oh, well, you know, people say crazy things when they have a fever like that.
But he was born outside the Two Rivers, and she confirms that to him.
Not directly. Well, but I mean, she does. It's confirmed.
Yeah.
Rand realizes it, but she sidesteps. She doesn't directly answer the question.
Yeah, and then accuses Rand of twisting words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's pretty clever in that scene. He figures out from context like what that something happened at the meeting that Nynaeve isn't talking about, and
Yeah. He reads her pretty well there.
Yeah. So what are you going to do? Rand asked. She studied him. He met her eyes steadily. Today, I'm going to have a bath. For the rest, we will have to see, won't we? And that's how the chapter ends.
All right. I want some fried chicken.
All right.
So I am not feeling great, so I'm going to let you carry most of this chapter. And mostly I'm going to be responding to what you say.
I have a good amount of notes, and there's lots of reading that I could do from this. There's some pretty cool scenes, especially towards the end.
What's the chapter?
This is Chapter 17, Watchers and Hunters. And our chapter heading is The Dragon Fang. Once again. And it starts with Rand leaves the conversation with Nynaeve at the end of the last chapter, and he walks into the common room. He says he thinks to take his mind off what Nynaeve told him. He just confirmed, basically, that he's not Tam's son.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty depressing on his mind.
Yeah. There's a quote later that I think I've actually mentioned out loud in the podcast before, where Rand brings up this problem to Lan when it's troubling him later, and Lan says something like, in the Borderlands, the man who raised you is your father.
Sure. And I think that's something that anyone who finds out that the parent who raised them is not their biological parent has to struggle with.
Yeah.
I mean, I know my father went through that. He found out as a teenager that his parents were actually his aunt and his uncle.
Oh. I didn't know that. That kind of thing used to be a lot more common.
Yeah.
My father was raised by his aunt.
And I think people would just adopt family, and that just became their children.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was...
That's what happened.
Yeah, he just had to, because unfortunately people didn't survive a lot of things back then.
Especially back then. What's going to happen to the kid if the family doesn't take it? There weren't really many options.
I guess there
not
aren't
all
really
that long ago.
that many good options these days either, but...
And as Rand enters the common room, we get to see a little bit of Tom's performance, which is cool. He does a bit of storytelling, and Rand lists a bunch of the stories he tells. And then when Tom's done telling stories, he plays this song, and that we see on the second page, the lyrics, which I really only noted because it's The Wind That Shakes the Willow. If you're familiar with the series, you probably remember this book. But the whole song is about wind that takes everything away. I just thought that was interesting. My love is gone, carried away by the wind that shakes the willow. And all the land is beaten hard by the wind that shakes the willow, and so on. I just thought it was...
I oftentimes don't read the music as carefully.
Yeah.
It's italicized. My eyes skip right over it.
I read it. Usually I felt like that was more relevant than usual.
Yeah, a lot of times I think it's not that I don't read them, it's just that they don't stick with me.
Yeah.
The lyrics a lot of times are just... I kind of like the funny body songs. Those are fun.
Yeah.
But this isn't one of those.
So as Tom starts playing music with a couple other musicians, Rand and Perrin get up to dance and leave Matt to guard the cloaks and weapons. And we see Rand awkwardly dance with Nynaeve and Moiraine. And also he's getting eyeballed by this creep in the corner with a scar on his face. And Rand can't figure out why yet. But we learn later, or Lan tells us later, that he's an informant for the White Cloaks.
And I had a thought that he might be a dark friend, but I think the informant for the White Cloaks is the more likely explanation.
Yeah. Here it is. I saw the man, Lan said. According to Master Fitch, he's a spy for the White Cloaks. He's no worry to us. Maybe he was not, but Rand could see something was bothering the warder. Thought that was an interesting hint drop. I just wonder what Lan is sensing here. After the little party...
I did want to say something about the dancing.
Yeah?
I like his interaction with the three women and how he was basically totally unable to read their relationship with each other. Or able... Like, I feel like he dances with each of the three women. Moiraine, Nynaeve, and Egwene.
And then Egwene, yeah.
And, like, we get a little bit... Like, he uses that as a pathway to tell us about how the three of them are dealing with each other. Because you've got this sort of power struggle between Nynaeve and Moiraine about what they want Egwene to be doing. And she's all freaked out because she doesn't know which one she should be obeying.
Yeah.
And so she's sort of like trying to hide her hair because she wants it loose, but she doesn't really want to show
Poor
Nynaeve.
Egwene has to sleep in a room with Moiraine and Nynaeve.
And that's just the three of them.
She probably doesn't sleep at all.
Oh my god. Yeah. I just imagine that they're just just staring at each other with like evil eyes. Because Nynaeve is really angry with her at this point.
Yeah.
And Moiraine thinks that Nynaeve is being ridiculous, and she doesn't really care because she's
gonna do what she thinks is necessary.
Right. And then there's a poor Egwene stuck in the middle, while the woman she wanted to be is at war with the woman she wants to become.
Yeah, she's a great character. But so we see the party retiring, and Rand wants to go back downstairs to get a glass of milk from the kitchen. And I underlined here, Lan looked up at him sharply. There's something wrong tonight. Don't wander far. And remember, we leave whether you're awake enough to sit in your saddle or if you have to be tied on. I just think that's interesting that, like, Rand notices that the warder seems to be worried about something, and then a couple paragraphs later, Lan says, there's something wrong tonight. Don't wander far. I just wonder what he's sensing, considering...
A Fade shows up later?
Yeah, in the very next scene, Rand goes down to the kitchen, gets what he wants. He's coming back up. As he came out of the kitchen drinking, a shape in dull black started toward him down the length of the hall, raising pale hands to toss back the dark cowl that had hidden the face beneath. The cloak hung motionless as the figure moved, and the face, a man's face, but pasty white.
So, didn't we just read in the last chapter that they can sense any Fade within a quarter mile?
Yeah. Well, I assume that Lan doesn't know that that's happening because the Fade is riding shadows. I think that's how he gets into the inn.
Yeah, it's an odd...
Because he's walking down this dark hallway.
Yeah, oh, okay.
And when the Fade leaves, it just... I think Rand describes it as the shadows reach out and take the Fade, and then it's gone.
That's one of those abilities we just don't see them use very often outside of the first book.
Yeah, it's a really cool ability.
Yeah. And they talk about in Faldara how they have, all sorts of lights to prevent there from being shadows, so the Fades can't get in, and you're not allowed to wear a hood, and they have sort of countermeasures, but, we don't see a lot of Fades slipping into secured areas through the shadows.
No, we don't.
And you'd think they'd use that a little bit more.
We know some places are special.
Yeah.
Like Tarvalon and the White Tower are made not just beautifully and with stone, but there's special wards and things.
Oh, yeah, they have wards throughout the entire
I don't know
structure.
about the other old cities.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't remember ever hearing that.
Just one of those things about Fades that gets dropped a little bit. The whole traveling through shadows thing is almost too overpowered, I feel like. If they can just pop out of any shadow anywhere, like...
We don't get to learn too much about the rules that govern that ability.
there's sort of these supreme baddies in the beginning, and then they just become like fast fighters, but not that fast because a bunch of people take them out. Like even Telmanis takes one out. It takes two out, right? Like
who?
Telmanis. Matt's.
I always said Telmains.
Yeah, I mean he takes out two.
Is he a blade master?
No. It's just the trick to killing a Fade is to already be dead. Just not care if they cut you. Yeah, I mean it's something that I think a lot of fantasy novels suffer from, which is you have to make something big and evil and scary for your really inept characters in the beginning, and like they've got to level up, but then you still have these like Fades that are supposed to be like the scariest thing ever, but they're really not. It's
not as much later.
Yeah, it's a leveling up problem, I think, that a lot of fantasy novels have, is if you make your characters that much scarier, you've got to sort of make your bad guys also that much scarier.
Yeah. Where was I? From oily black hair to puffy cheeks was as smooth as an eggshell. Rand choked, spraying milk. You are one of them, boy, the Fade said, a hoarse whisper like a file softly drawn across bone. Rand backs away. Says he freezes under the eyeless gaze.
So again, this is where the Dark One, or Ishmael, whoever sent the Fade, doesn't know which of the three he's looking for.
Yeah.
Because you're one of them. One of the three, I assume.
Mm-hmm. And then the Fade says, where are the others? I know they're here. Speak, boy, and I'll let you live. Rand's back struck wood.
I'm sorry, he went to the kitchen for a glass of milk?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really like driving in the fact that these are still like boys, like young, not mature. Like
they're not that young.
I know, but like
I had my own apartment when I was Rand's age.
Yeah, let's say I wasn't
holding down a job.
I wasn't drinking milk when I was Rand's age.
No.
Yeah, so that's what I mean by when I say like they're acting like children a little bit.
Yeah,
even though they are 20. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. Rand's back struck wood, a wall or a door. He couldn't make himself look around to see which. He shivered, watching the myrddraal slither nearer. Speak, I say, or... From above came a quick clatter of boots. From the stairs up the hall, the myrddraal cut off, whirling. The cloak hung still. For an instant, the Fade's head tilted, as if that eyeless gaze could pierce the wooden wall. I like that. I thought that was interesting. The sword appeared in the dead white hand, black as the black of the cloak. The light in the hall seemed to grow dimmer in the presence of that blade. The pounding of boots grew louder, and the Fade spun back to Rand, an almost boneless movement. The black blade rose, narrow lips peeled back in a rictus snarl. Trembling, Rand knew he was going to die. Midnight steel flashed at his head and stopped. You belong to the great Lord of the Dark. The breathy grating of that voice sounded like fingernails scratched across slate. You are his. Spinning in a black blur, the Fade darted down the hallway away from Rand. The shadows at the end of the hall reached out and embraced it, and it was gone. And then Lan leaps down the stairs, presumably, because it sounds like he just lands in the middle of the hallway.
Yeah.
But the Fade's already gone.
I wonder, it says that its blade appeared in his hand. Do you think he just drew it quickly, or do you think he actually summoned it from somewhere? I assume it's just a quick draw, and Rand's a little too young and inexperienced to see it be drawn.
Yeah, I think the Fade's just fast.
Just fast. Okay.
I imagine they move like they don't have bones. That's the way I always kind of think of them as snake-like.
Yeah, well, they describe them as snake-like repeatedly with the overlapping scales,
the armor, and the way they move.
Yeah, totally. What do you think about him saying that Rand belongs to the Great Lord of the Dark? That right there and then, the Dark had a chance to kill Rand and end this, and they didn't.
I don't know that this has happened yet, but isn't there a scene where Belzamon, or like, is it Elon that says, like, nobody gets to kill him, like, I kill him later? Oh,
yeah, that's definitely later.
Or, like, I don't know if he's passed that message out yet, but the Fade could have killed him.
I think that's after they're linked by Balefire. He doesn't want anyone to kill Rand because he's afraid it's going to kill him.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah. That's what I think that is he doesn't want anyone else to because he knows that he's hurt. Because I think that's after the scene where he like Rand loses his hand and Elon's like can't feel his hand.
Weird.
Yeah, I think it's much later. I could, but maybe we're thinking of different scenes.
Yeah, I don't know what this line is about. You belong to the Great Lord of the Dark. I mean, we also know. Are they trying to kill him?
I don't think so.
I mean, I guess I should say clearly not, because the Fade could have killed him,
right?
But didn't.
Right. So
I think the point is to capture him.
I think the point is to drive him insane. I think the Dark One is just all about torturing Rand, setting him on edge, driving him to the edge of what he can handle, making him stress and panic and fear. I think the Dark One's just fucking with Rand because he thinks he can make Rand destroy the world.
Yeah. We've talked about this a little before. I think that's the best thing we've come up with, I think.
Yeah.
What's going on right now.
Because, yeah, I mean, there's so many opportunities for the Dark One to end Rand.
Yeah.
And instead he scares him, tortures the people he loves, kills the people he loves.
Just to make him unstable.
Yep.
It works to a large degree.
Yeah. We'll get to that, well, in a couple of years.
Rand struggled to find his voice. Fade, he gasped. It ran that way. Lan nodded absently. He seemed to be listening to something else. Yes, it's going. Fading. No time to pursue it now. We're leaving, sheepherder. Leaving, Rand said. Now? In the night? You want to wait for the half man to come back, sheepherder? For half a dozen of them, maybe? It knows where we are now.
Yeah, it's time to run. They tracked you down.
Yeah.
And how do they track him down?
Rand told Fane.
Rand told Fane.
Where they are. Earlier today.
Yeah.
Same day.
Yeah. That could work. Yes, that could work. He's like, yeah, he's just sending the Fade after them. I mean, the other thing it could be is, you know, like I said, I was thinking that guy with the scar on his face may have been a dark friend. Maybe sent there to confirm, but I think it's later pretty obvious that he's just a White Cloak spy. That's how the White Cloaks find them as they leave.
Next thing I have is Moiraine warning Master Fitch about what will probably happen to the inn. She's like urging him to take this seriously. He doesn't take it very seriously. He says like, well, if any of those ruffians come around here, me and the boys will take care of them.
Yeah, that inn burns to the ground.
Yeah.
Although Moiraine sends him a lot of gold. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene where they ask, I think one of the girls, Egwene asks Min what happened to the inn. And she says, oh, with all the gold Moiraine sent, he's building it twice as big.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
She says in the next scene, as they're leaving, Rand goes to try to apologize to Egwene, and instead what kind of comes out of his mouth is, Egwene, I'm sorry, I can't think straight anymore. And I just thought that was nice. She leaned down to grip his hand hard. In the light from the stable, he could see her face clearly. She did not look as frightened as she had. I saw that as them kind of making up.
Yeah, they've been fighting for a couple of chapters here for the last week, mostly because Rand's an idiot.
Yeah.
And so he tried to apologize and did a decent job of it. She accepted.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I can't
She's taking
think
responsibility.
Yeah.
For acting like an idiot.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I can't think anymore. I'll tell you what.
So Lan leads them through the town to one of the gates. They wake up the gatekeeper, who are incredulous that anyone would want to leave in the middle of the night. And he warns them... I don't know if I underline this. Doesn't matter. He warns them that they shouldn't go out in the night because of the wolves and things prowling the night. But what he says is, we've recently found like more than 10 dead heads of cattle that have been like mutilated outside the city.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this last time, where we were debating about whether it's really the wolves or whether it's actually trollocs.
I think it's definitely trollocs in this case.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Whether or not other cases are wolves or trollocs, this is without a doubt trollocs to me.
Well, we don't see anyone say, I saw a pack of wolves attack these cattle.
No,
what
never.
they say is like, we found a mutilated corpse.
Right.
I think that's what's happening.
Yeah. Since our last discussion, I've been thinking about it more, and I'm almost certain now that the wolves were never at fault.
That's a good one. I never picked that up before.
I'm proud of that one.
So Lan eventually talks the guard into opening the door, and as they're cranking it open, 5 white-cloaked men walked into the light from the guardhouse door. Their cowls were drawn up to hide their faces, but each man rested his hand on a sword. The white cloaks show up. The watchmen stopped their cranking and exchanged uneasy looks. This is none of your affair, the first watchman said belligerently. The children hold no sway here. The children of the light, the white-cloaked man who had spoken said softly, hold sway wherever men walk in the light. Only where the shadow of the Dark One reigns are the children denied, yes? This is a strange speech pattern this character has.
Is that Bornhald?
I believe so. Talking right now. They all have their hoods up, so Rand doesn't know who they are yet. He's run into the one, and he is in the group somewhere. He takes his hood off later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like this scene. I'll read a bunch of it and see what we want to keep and what we don't. The warder had not moved. In fact, he seemed completely at ease, but not many people could look at the children so uncaringly. Lan's stony face could as well have been looking at a bootblack. When the white cloak spoke again, he sounded suspicious. What kind of people want to leave the town walls in the night during times like these? Oh, it's here, with wolves stalking the darkness, and the Dark One's handiwork seen flying over the town. He eyed the braided leather that crossed Lan's forehead and held his long hair back. A northerner, yes? And Rand's realizing that they saw the drag car over Baerlon.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, I had never really noticed that before either.
What was that sentence again?
With wolves stalking the darkness and the Dark One's handiwork seen flying over the town.
Yeah, good call. And the wolves probably aren't wolves. They're probably the trollocs.
Probably.
Yeah.
Rand notices it. He says Rand hunched lower in his saddle because he doesn't want the white cloaks to see his face because he already had a run-in with him. A drag car. It had to be that, unless the man had just named anything he did not understand as the Dark One's handiwork, which is possible also, but...
So this is one situation where Rand is less obtuse than I am. That's pretty impressive there.
Yeah, he can be pretty dense sometimes. Travelers, Lan replied calmly, of no interest to you or yours. Everyone is of interest to the children of the light. Lan shook his head slightly. Are you really after more trouble with the governor? He's limited your numbers in the town, even had you followed. What will he do when he discovers you're harassing honest citizens at his gates? He turned to the watchmen. Why have you stopped? They hesitated and put their backs back into the crank, then hesitated again when the white cloak spoke. And then it looks like Bornhald notices Rand. Yeah, geez, okay. I have a couple more paragraphs. I don't know if I'm boring the shit out of you.
I just sort of want to talk about the white cloaks a little bit because, I mean, these are it's a bit of a crazy force because they're nationless and they just walk. I think part of it is that you have a very poor national government.
Right. Where are they based again? In one of the nations that's barely a nation.
Yeah, Amadicia, I believe.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ones that it has like a city-state, but it's not a nation. Really.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just really the city is. But so they really don't have a government that controls them. They're an army.
What do they say? Like the queen of Amadicia? Is it Amadicia? She can her power stretches as far as like she can see with her own eyes, and that's
like
it.
A day's ride or something like that. So the Children of Light are in Amadicia, and they're just an unlawful force that does whatever they want in any nation they want.
Yeah, I think they're granted like a certain amount of autonomy. They were granted a certain amount of autonomy after the White Cloak Wars.
That's right. So they initially came to be during the War of the 100 Years.
Okay.
So that's pretty recently in terms of Randland time. That's only about 1,000 years ago. And they were a small group for a while until the Aes Sedai began to shrink in power. And then they sort of...
Oh.
They began to grow a little bit until they formed a treaty with the king of Almadesia. Very quickly, once they formed a permanent base of operations in Almadesia, they quickly overshadowed the king. Isn't the queen of Almadesia, isn't that Julian's honey?
I think that does happen. Julian or
Julian. Oh, God. You said Julian now. That's why I like him, because that's my middle name. Julian Sandar.
Yeah.
Yeah. He ends up married to a queen, former queen.
He's a cool character.
Yeah.
I forgot about him.
He's got a little fedora and a swordbreaker.
I always imagined it as like a hat made out of reeds. Or
I think it's just a fedora.
Is it?
Yeah. Not a fedora, a fez.
Oh, that's right. Then Bornhald says, I'm skipping over a little bit. What have we here? Someone who does not wish to be seen? And he's looking at Rand. And he goes, what do you... Ah! The man brushed back the hood of his white cloak, and Rand was looking at the face he had known would be there. Bornhald nodded with obvious satisfaction. Clearly, Watchman, I have saved you from a great disaster. These are dark friends you are about to help escape from the light. You should be reported to your governor for discipline, or perhaps given to the questioners to discover your true intent this night. You would not wish that, no? Instead, I will take these ruffians to our camp, that they may be questioned in the light, instead of you, yes?
That's just typical shitty cop behavior.
Right, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, just like...
I don't understand why. Well...
what?
Because if you resist, they'll...
You smell that? I smell a little weed on you. You gonna come with me cooperatively, or am I gonna have to search you, see if you and plant some of those drugs on you and see if you like? They just use dark friend as an excuse to do whatever the hell they want, in the way that modern cops use drugs as an excuse to do whatever the hell they want.
Just sprinkle a little crack on them.
Just sprinkle crack on them, Johnson.
Thanks, Dave Chappelle. So then Moiraine takes over from here. She says, you will take me to your camp, White Cloak? Moraine's voice suddenly came from every direction at once. She had moved back into the night at the children's approach, and shadows clumped around her. You will question me? Darkness wreathed her as she took a step forward. It made her seem taller. You will bar my way? Another step, and Rand gasped. She was taller. Her head was level with where he sat on the Grey's back. Shadows clung about her face like thunderclouds. This is a cool thing here that she's doing. I kind of wanted to talk about what it could be. I think it's in totally illusion. I don't think she's actually doing anything other than tricking their eyes.
Agreed. It's 100% illusion. And when the giantess steps over the gate,
it's just an image. She's probably walking through it.
Totally.
Aes Sedai, Bornhald shouted, and 5 swords flashed from their sheaths. Die! It's ridiculous. The other 4 hesitated, but he slashed at her in the same motion that cleared his sword. Rand cried out as Moraine's staff rose to intercept the blade. The delicately carved wood could not possibly stop hard-swung steel. Sword met staff, and sparks sprayed in a fountain. A hissing roar, hurling Bornhald back into his white-cloaked companions. All 5 went down in a heap. Tendrils of smoke rose from Bornhald's sword on the ground beside him, blade bent in a right angle where it had been melted almost in 2. I was a little curious about what she did there, too. That would have to be a combination of things.
Yeah, I mean, I assume just a little bit of fire right at the point where she hits the blade, and maybe a little bit of air to make her blow a little stronger.
And the sparks.
I think just because it's hot and she was hitting it, that, my guess is she channeled a little bit of fire into the blade, so it was like weak, and then smacked it with air, and that smack of the heated blade made sparks fly everywhere.
Yeah, she knocks him backwards, too.
One of the most satisfying scenes for me is when the White Cloaks try to go up against Perrin, and they realize just how outclassed they are. They're such a terrible fighting force.
They end up kind of looking good later in the series, like after Galad takes over.
Oh, I mean, sure, they're decent individual fighters.
Yeah.
And as part of a larger army, they're effective. But as an individual force, they're so outclassed by so many groups.
Yeah.
Anyone with any power.
It doesn't seem to me like they have the training that, say, a Borderlands soldier would have.
No, they have overconfidence.
Yeah.
They have the confidence of a Borderlands soldier, but they don't have the lifetime training. they believe that the light is what's going to create their victory, not skill.
And you'd think if you're so obsessed with hunting the shadow, go help the Borderlanders. They'll, I'm sure, gladly take a few extra armies. There's plenty up there.
They probably would be like, yeah, you're pretty useless. Go away.
Please go back.
Yeah. and stop making trouble.
Quit talking that nonsense.
I think the first time a White Cloak scrolled a Dragon's Fang on a door in the Borderlands, I think they'd get their ass beat for that.
Yeah. Also, disrespecting Aes Sedai wouldn't fly.
No. The Borderlanders do respect the Aes Sedai quite a bit.
And they seem to just understand what the hell's going on a lot better than the rest of Randlanders.
Well, they're actually fighting the Shadow.
Right.
I wonder, why don't the Green Aja spend more time up at the Borderland? Because they can use their power to fight the Trollocs.
Right? I always sort of wondered that.
They should be up there doing training rotations.
If I was the head of the Green Aja, that's what I would do.
If you were head of any Aja, they've all totally failed in their purpose.
You new member, 10 years in the Borderlands.
Blue Aja, prevent wars, there are tons of wars. Brown Aja, preserve knowledge, they've lost all their knowledge. White Aja, let's be logical. They're the most emotional characters in the whole series.
Are they?
They deny it the whole way, but they are super emotional. They're always super angry or something, and they're hiding it. They're like, I'm not angry! No! And then, I have no emotions. And they're just suppressing the hell out of them. The Red Aja that trying to prevent another breaking, and they're just
basically the Black Aja.
Yeah, basically the Black Aja, and they're just calling the ability to channel right out of the species by killing all the males. I don't know, what am I missing? The Green Aja, the Battle Aja, gets their ass kicked in every single battle. Everything they say that the Ajas are good for, they're just the worst at it. They just have failed in their purpose over the last 1,000 years, repeatedly and spectacularly.
Yeah, there's only so many Aes Sedai left, too.
And also, they are riddled with the black. And I'm wondering how much of that is why they're very ineffective.
Probably a lot of it.
Yeah.
Moiraine's voice roared like a whirlwind. Shadow spun in on her, draped her like a hooded cloak. She loomed as high as the town wall. Her eyes glared down. A giant staring at insects. And then Lan starts yelling at them. Go! Lan shouted, and he just bolts. Yeah, cool scene. And then she steps over the wall and walks out.
Probably just with the rest of them running out the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because she's not making herself bigger. And the gate's open.
She's just putting on a show to scare everyone.
Yep, and then while everyone else gets out, including her.
Yeah. You were taller than a giant, Egwene said breathlessly. Was I? Moiraine said absently. I saw you, Egwene protested. The mind plays tricks in the night. The eyes see what is not there. This is no time for games, Nynaeve began angrily.
She's like, it wasn't there. You saw something that didn't exist. She's telling the truth the whole time. She wasn't that big. It's all illusion.
And then Moiraine says, no time for games indeed. What we gained at the Stag and the Lion we may have lost here. If only I could believe the drag car was on the ground. Or that the myrddraal is truly blind. Matt tells everyone to turn around and look at the city. And there's a huge building burning like a torch in the night.
Stag and Lion. Yep.
Flames lit the night over Baerlon as if someone had built a house-sized bonfire, tinting the undersides of the cloud with red. I warned him, Moiraine said, but he would not take it seriously.
And this basically starts the flight that leads to Shadar Logoth, right?
Yeah. They start running through the night here, and they don't hear the Trollocs till the next chapter, I think.
Yeah. But I just sort of think that if Rand had never run into Fane,
or if he just hadn't said anything.
I hadn't said anything. Well, it's that Taviranness, right? He wandered randomly in the town. That randomness led him to Fane. That led him to reveal his location, which leads them into Shadar Logoth and everything that comes of that.
Which is actually kind of an important thing.
Hugely important, yeah. But just little things like that. When we talk about the Taviranness of the characters, when something has to happen, there's a little bit of randomness in there, and the pattern just tugs on it a little bit. And then
even when it seems bad right off the bat. going to Shadar Logoth is not good, but Matt benefits so much from being awfully ill for so long.
Sure, and there's no way that Rand could have cleansed the source without his exposure to Shadar Logoth.
True.
And without the cut in his side that let him know the two forces were attracted and repulsed. And all the stuff that comes with the cleansing of the source is absolutely important that this happens.
Yeah. He had changed back into his shifting cloak, and it whipped around him, fluttering through grays and greens. And the only mind he paid it was to keep it clear of his sword arm. His face remained without expression, but his eyes searched constantly, as if he expected an ambush at any moment. So Lan already knows that they're being pursued.
Oh, yeah. Well, the myrddraal knows where they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is really where the story starts to accelerate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This next chapter, 18, is going to be a good one.
We'll see you next time.
Have a good one, kids.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or your favorite podcast client.